Hello again, everybody. Hopefully you got your shots in and everyone's energized and ready to go here. Day 3 for me. Always fun when I get on the stage this much, but this is definitely going to be a fun one for us because this is a project that you've heard us talk about a couple times at various RESO conferences and other conferences as well. And the reason why it's fun is because we continue to keep talking about it because it continues to move forward, which is not always what happens in our industry, right? Like sometimes you talk about these big ideas and it's about making sure they actually come to fruition. So that's really what we're talking about today is that collaboration, and it says MLS collaboration, but it's also collaboration with the technology partners in the space too. And this has been a really, really widespread collaboration that we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to start actually with asking our great panelists, Michael, Mark, and David, to introduce themselves real quick, and then we'll jump straight into questions. So Michael, if you want to go first and tell them who you are.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Michael Spickes, TourZazz. We are a showing tour service provider for the real estate industry and tech built by agents for agents. So anyways, just have an interesting perspective on this topic, probably more from the buyer's angle than anything, but thank you for having me today.
Mark?
Mark Bessett, I'm the Chief Technology Officer at CRMLS. I'm also the UPI chair, so some of you might have seen me before. We are using the UPI here in this project. I'm just gonna get that disclosure out there. A little plug for myself. I know, Sam, we're not supposed to sell anything, but I'm selling the UPI. Okay, cool. I also have some swampland, but we won't talk about that right now. Go ahead, David.
David Gumpper with the Workgroup and also acting CTO for TourZazz. Been helping them build out their platform over the last couple of years. But I do want to just say a very heartfelt gratitude to RESO and Stellar MLS for the Hurricane Relief Fund that you guys did the other night. I live 21 miles northeast of here, which I had a couple down limbs, not bad, but I've also been down to Inglewood, which is about 15 miles from here, to help people tarp their roofs, and down to Fort Myers. And what you guys did is remarkable, and thank you very much from the bottom of our heart and all this other, the Southwest Floridians. So thank you.
Excellent. So we're not going to spend too much time talking about what the hub actually is, but I do want to give a little bit of a recap of it just in case you haven't seen one of our previous presentations on it. But the idea was to help create interoperability among showing providers. And what we talked about between Bright, CRMLS, and MRED is instead of us each doing our own individual solution to get that interoperability, why don't we put our resources together and build something that we can then share and work with the vendors that are in that space to create that interoperability. And it was really about not recreating the wheel and making sure that we are all trying to solve the same problem. And then we're going to get into a little bit about we've applied that to the 3 of us, but how does that apply to everyone else as well in the industry? But we have just finished, and we're finishing up what we're calling the preview period. So we had a hackathon at the end of the year last year, and then what we did is we moved into a period of time where we worked with specific vendors, specifically TourZazz on the stage with us here, Showing Time, HomeSnap, and Showing Lee, and then we had Insta Showing in for a little bit as well, and some other people giving feedback where they really helped us build out the hub. So the idea was, proof of concept worked, now we need to build something that's actually gonna be able to go into production. And these guys and their teams were literally with us every single week on calls working through the product, and they were really our user acceptance team in a lot of ways. So I'm gonna start with you, Michael, and tell us a little bit about how did being part of that hub preview work out for TourZazz?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. It's interesting because I've been a practicing agent, or actually I've run a team for over 20 years in the Austin, Texas area. And having been a part of various Facebook forums and things like this over many, many years, I've always seen the very loud agents communicate how showings are really treated as two very different beasts from the listing side and from the buyer side. And it really resonated with me at the time that we really realized that the buyer side is a totally different thing. So when the whole idea of interoperability and the coexistence of 2 showing platforms working together came up, and that there was actually a party that was marrying, being the hub, marrying these different technologies together, allowing them to communicate one common language. Can I show your home at 3 o'clock? This was really cool. And of course, being from the buyer side, this was very exciting for us to be able to take part in, especially given the longevity of other showing services in the space, which we built to coexist with anyway. But the fact that the hub came into existence, and this is just more of a cohesive industry-wide effort to be able to give us a common language for everyone to communicate. Because at the end of the day, listing agent, the buy side, the sell side, they need to be able to communicate with each other, but the truth is, they're two different vehicles moving forward toward one common goal. So I hope that makes sense.
Well, it was interesting when we were doing our prep for this, one of the words that we've used a lot in talking about this hub was choice. And when we were talking with you, we said, well, choice isn't just about choice of systems. It's really choice of features, choice of product. And really, so as a practitioner, tell us a little bit more about what choice means to you and kind of dig into that a little bit more.
Well, choice for our team, because we actually interviewed about several hundred agents and said, what is actually choice? Interesting you asked that. What does choice mean for you? And they said, choice means, choice is complemented by change management. Change management, there's aspects of showings that change every single minute. Babies need their diapers changed. Dogs need to take a break. Homes aren't what the buyers thought. So there's change management. So the agents, and for me as a practitioner, having led a team, they need options when they're actually on tour in the field with the showing. So choice extends beyond just the static nature of a showing, meaning that if there's innovation, if there's something that helps me as a buyer's agent, not necessarily from the listing side, but from a buyer's agent side, this is what the agents have been screaming about for so many years that they need, especially while out there in the field actually doing the showings. Did I answer your question?
It does, thank you. So David, on the technical side of things, working with the 3 MLSs as part of the hub, and honestly the other showing providers that were in there as well, because we were all on the same calls together, which that in and of itself was really interesting to have people who are competitors, just like we do at RESO here, but working together on a common goal. But how are you integrating with the hub, and how has your roadmap been affected with that integration?
Yeah, I mean, the integration, the whole concept itself, has really made us look at some of the technologies we are using to provide those features, especially on the buyer agency side of the showing process, and how can we leverage some of the newer technology out there that's going to make us enable that interoperability with the showing hub. So the showing hub really made us, kind of focus more on actually build another roadmap, kind of, right, Michael? We've kind of added certain features and functionality that we didn't have before because of having this opportunity of a common language to really make a difference on the buyer side of the showing process.
So that's one of the things that was really interesting to us, even at the hackathon last year, and then going through this process, is it is creating innovation even
Absolutely.
For all of you. Like, you're getting the opportunity to say, I have the ability to do more now because of some of these things that we're learning and doing as part of the hub.
Yeah, and it's the automation piece of it, right? And to deliver that change management that Michael was. And it's kind of really funny because I've got my house on the market, right? Time to downsize for this guy. But just moments ago, we were supposed to have a showing at 9:45 this morning, right? 10 after 9, my agent's texting me. They're early. Is it okay? I'm texting my son who's back at home. Are you up? and this dialogue is going back and forth, and they didn't show up until almost 9:55. All right, so and that's where I think is going to be very interesting for us, of having those types of experiences and listening to agents who are telling us stories about those types of experiences, that where we can, with the showing hub, with this new opportunity, we're going to be able to take that whole process and even deliver a better consumer experience. And that's the key here. And for us, our consumers are agents and brokers. But for them, and indirectly to us, it's the consumer. It's the buyer and the seller. How can we build a product that makes this whole process be seamless and just let it happen, right? Even with all the change management.
It's okay to downsize. Just make sure you save space for your big green egg. Can't lose that. So, Mark, so we're building this out, and the hub is going to be the same architecture, even though it's 3 independent hubs between MRED, CRMLS, and Bright. It's the exact same architecture in all 3 places. Why is that so critical to have a consistent hub architecture, especially in the first couple of years after release?
Well, one of the biggest advantages we wanted to make sure that we had in the marketplace on the vendor side was the ability to go and certify, if you will, their ability to work with the hub. We want to make the integration costs smaller for all the vendors and really put everybody kind of on an equal footing so that there's no barrier of entry that there might be otherwise. Where you could have a vendor could come up with an idea and say, hey, I want to get into this space, I've got this product, and they don't have to worry about the fact that everybody else is already integrated with the other 15 vendors, and for them, that's going to be they wouldn't even be competitive. I mean, to be able to go and integrate with all of these different entities. With the hub, they have the opportunity to just integrate with the hub. So the cost for everybody is really lower with this model, and that cost savings really gets translated all the way down to the members and users that are consuming these technologies. So it's a much better model from a financial perspective. From an MLS perspective, our primary objective is to make sure there's choices to make. You know, as Michael pointed out, and this is something that, interestingly, as a MLS exec, I really did not even have this concept that things were so disparate in the showing world, right? For me, I'm like probably most people, a showing application's an application to do showings. Okay, got it. You guys are the brain trust. You guys can do showings. And we, you know, when we were switching out or trying to figure out what we're going to do with the changes that came around with Zillow and Showing Time, everyone's coming out of the woodwork and it's like, can we be your guy? Can we be your guy? And like, I don't know if I want to have just one guy, a vendor that is. And so we started talking to some experts in the field, people that had experience, and they actually talked about this exact problem, that there's actually multiple use cases. There's vendors that do just, or that would like to do, or there's a use case, I should say, for buyers. There's a use case for listing agents. There's a use case for call centers. And I mean, there's a lot. How do you build something that really can do everything? I have a friend of mine who likes to say, that's a mile wide, an inch deep. He's a Southern guy. But anyway, that's exactly what we don't really want. We want to have something that can be deep where you need it to be deep. And to do that, we have to have one mechanism, one place where we can version the software, one place where someone can integrate and not feel like if the world changes, if they go to this market or that market or the other market, that won't be satisfactory. They won't be able to be competitive in those other markets. So that's why we want to have one system, one way to integrate. It's a hub spoke kind of model. So thus Showing Hub.
So to follow up on that, Michael, Mark was always talking about having the same architecture in all these different markets, lowering costs, making the barrier entry. So someone on the other side of it who has a new product that wants to get into these markets, can you talk a little bit how you see this working for showing interoperability in those other markets that you're trying to get into and what that's going to do for you?
Well, and you know, historically, I just want to lay the foundation and kind of go off of what Mark was saying. Historically, the industry has seen, historically, in the showing world, the showing space and any technology has been to the greater benefit of the listing side. This is the very reason agents have been screaming. You know, showings is not just about scheduling an appointment. Showings is not just about making a property available between this time and this time. Change management is what really wreaks havoc on everything, and that's why buyers agents are screaming. And so when we, and I apologize, I want to make sure I answer your question there, but you know, as we came out of the gate coexisting with other showing services for the very reason, interestingly, that the Showing Hub is in existence. And I think the industry needs to start, or should consider, see showings as an opportunity for all these little silos to be able to play in the same sandbox, for the ultimate benefit to the consumer, because there's been a very utilitarian viewpoint toward showings when it really can be translated into an amazing experience, thrusting agents. We've always said that showings were the direct funnel into the heart and soul of a buyer. You know, because you can see everything that they like or dislike. You can see everything. Well, when you capture that and you remove, you complement the utility aspect of showings with an experience, this is where you can really change the industry, if that makes sense. Did I answer your question?
So maybe we'll come back to that again. But so Mark, you talked about getting this into the other markets and making that easier to get into. So once we stand it up in R3, what's the strategy beyond that for other markets that want to have multiple showing systems having interoperability together? What's the strategy to get there? And we will talk timing a little bit, but before we get to that, like, what's the plan? So
Sure. So I think David mentioned that we were doing a lot of brainstorming along the way. Yeah, as use cases came up and as we kind of hammered this into shape, everyone sort of thought, well, we can do this too, we can do that. And this is really the heart of an agile system, right? You get so much done and you go, wow, now I know how to do this part, or now I figured out there's other problems I didn't know about, and you kind of like converge on a really good answer. It's very difficult to do that if you're just sort of in a room that's kind of a vacuum, and we kind of think, this would be cool, this would be cool. But we're building it, and as you build it, you get more and more ideas. And that could, with change management and what we talked about having one system, that makes it a little bit difficult for us to do as we actually engineer it. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the software that does this hub product that MRED and Bright and CRMLS have jointly developed. We're going to make that available. We're going to license that out to all the MLSs for free, so that anyone that's an MLS can get a license to use the software if they would like to. We'll see where that goes. If anyone's interested, you can send me an email. We'll do that once we get past our release model that's coming up pretty soon. We don't want to give out some crappy software. So we'll make sure that it'll be in release and available for that model, so that we can make it pervasive, make it easy for the vendors to get into these other markets, as we spoke about before, and hopefully bring something to the industry that's workable. Once we're at that point, that's where our friends at RESO come in, and we have those guys sort of move in, hopefully, and kind of take up the mantle. It's for some future planning, but that's the overall strategy and approach.
that, just to follow up on that, I mean, that really is, I think, one of the biggest attractors to someone like a TourZazz or a ShowingTime or a HomeSnap or anyone that participated in that preview with us, is the idea that we're not going to keep this just for ourselves. Like, obviously the three of us have a lot of subscribers. It would have been helpful, but it wasn't as useful as us saying, well, we want to share this with the industry and make it available to everyone. So like having that available, sending that out, then solves the problem that we all have to some degree or another. And maybe you decide not to use it in your market, but the idea is, here's the code. And when we talked about consistency, especially at the beginning, like that's some of the details we want to work out a little bit, but that's why we had that first part of, we want to maintain some kind of consistency in the architecture for the first couple of years, so it won't be necessarily like an open source license. Technically, there's going to be some governance about changes and things like that, because the whole point of this is to make it easy to achieve this interoperability across the entire country. And you can't do that if we have like 500 million different hubs, which would just get us back to the situation we're at today. So,
yeah, and make no mistake that part of what made it compelling for these vendors to come and be part of the preview, and I use this term vendors, and I'm really trying to get away from saying that, because really they're integration partners, right? These companies and these entities, they're really not vendors, they're actually partners and for an MLS at least, they're our partners to make it so the experience for our members is as best as we can make it. So part of what's made it compelling for them is that they only have to integrate one place. They don't have to go, okay, I'll do this, guys. It's kind of the same, a little bit different, and then they have to make something special for that particular implementation versus this particular implementation versus that. And those costs, again, start to go up. So to facilitate that, that's why we're doing this licensing model where we'll make it as absolutely minimal cost for everybody as we can. It makes sense for us too.
So, go ahead, Michael. Yep.
Well, and actually, I just wanted to say something Mark and David said as well is I am just a huge fan of what you all are doing at the, with the hub. And, historically, as a practitioner, we've seen associations and MLSs line 10 vendor or whoever up, because that's the way it's historically been. Integration partners, but it hasn't really been an integration per se. And there's always typically been a winner picked.
Yeah.
A winner picked. And what I absolutely love, and I think about when we were driving back from the happy hour yesterday, we were driving over whatever bridge this is out here. And he said, 10 years ago, this bridge wasn't here. Well, how were people getting across to the other side?
It was an older bridge, but
there was an older bridge,
new
but
bridge,
the challenge is, but the point I started thinking about the accessibility. And at the end of the day, what Mark and I were talking about yesterday was the whole choice of service, the power of service through this hub is being transferred into the hands of the agent and ultimately into the consumer. Where of course the MLS and association looks like an absolute hero because they're putting that ability and the power of choice into the hands of the practitioners.
Yeah, exactly. One of the philosophies we've been doing, and at least at our MLS, I can't speak for all MLSs, is to make as much choice available, obviously, and really take ourselves out of this position of being the entity that picks winners. So someone comes and they're like, "Hey, we've got this great idea," and we can say, oh, "Okay, cool. We'll have a site. They'll give us a site license and a good deal based on the number of maybe members." And so we say, "Okay, cool, you're the guy." And that really, to some degree, that's great. A lot of members might think that's really good. It keeps their costs down, perhaps they think. But it doesn't provide choice. And so by picking a winner, we're also sort of building up barriers for those other vendors to come in that might actually potentially have a better product. Or at least have a product that is better in some ways, and there's disadvantages just like anything else. So we want to be out of that position of picking winners, providing a mechanism where really it's a marketplace, and we'll make the marketplace open to anybody that has the technology to participate in it, and let the members make the choice, right? If they're on the buy side and they like this product better because it does buy side very well, great, let's empower those guys to make that choice. And if you're on the listing side and this other application does that for you and you love it, let's empower them to make that choice. And then there's self-showings and the call centers and brokers. If maybe a broker wants to build their own, why not make it so that broker wants to build their own? They can plug theirs in the hub just like anybody else and interact with every other showing system that's in the MLS. So
David, I want to come back to you because our title is about collaboration. And we've kind of hinted around it a little bit, but I'd like for you to talk a little bit about the resources actually required to do this. Like, this wasn't just, let's have a couple of meetings and we're going to throw a product out there. Like, this has been real work that you've been doing, that you have been putting in. So if you want to talk a little bit about that on your side.
Yeah. Look, the collaboration has been awesome on this with the MLSs, with all 3 MLSs and the vendors that have participated in this process. And it was critical that we went through this process. And Dan Ray, thank you very much because I think he actually, over this course of time now, this is not easy stuff. It actually is a lot more complicated, a lot more difficult to do than what we stood up just even from last March when we first started up. We had a few endpoints, we did this and this, but then we got into the use cases. And that's where the integration partners came into play to go through their testing and their evaluation and say, well, something, guys, this is not working. So for as an example, right? There's an endpoint that you can put in restrictions of when a listing is not available for a showing, right? Well, I don't want a list of all the restrictions because that means on my side of the platform, I got to figure out when's it available. So so I raised my hand and said, we need an availability. And I probably said it more times than I really needed
David
to.
raises his hand a lot, which is really good, by the way. Thank you.
So, but it finally came around, and we're getting to the point where I think that should be done pretty soon, right? We'll have that endpoint where it's going to enable us to know, give us back in the response and the payload back to us to let us know that, hey, this home is available on this day between the hours of 10 to 4 and then maybe 6 to 7, right? And that's great because now I've structured and leveraged the APIs that we're using to create the route and the tours and the timing of when to put homes. We take that logic all that data back, and we're feeding it through our APIs to actually calculate what those routes are going to be, what home gets shown first, what's the most optimized route, and then allow agents to actually modify that route and then let them know whether that home is available for certain times to be shown. So,
if I could just add on that, Chris. So there was so many people really involved with this. It was kind of astounding. Even you talk about dog years. Well, this is a lot of MLS years. From the very beginning, I mean, we had marketing guys involved. We had lawyers already involved. Those guys are the really glacial guys, right? I mean, that's the most glacial part of any project is the legal people. But everybody pitched in. We had a lot of guys. Actually, Dan's in the room and Damien's in the room. And I know on our side, they're critical people that make this project happen. We have 3 others or 4 others that aren't even on the call. Bright had a team of people working on their side. Yep. Chris has, he's got his team working on from MRED, working on their components. Everybody really came together from an MLS perspective that I haven't really seen that before. And so it was really exciting to work on a project where everybody just jumped in, and it was like, a wonderful experience where we were able to brainstorm, build, test, deploy,
iterate.
Get feedback, iterate. And I mean, a true agile model to work on.
But I have to admit, the first call was quite awkward.
The first call was really awkward.
When we had 10 different showing vendors and no one knew what to say.
Right. It was pretty close, Mel. We did, and part of the reason, if you guys remember, who was here? We did the hackathon in Kiowa. I don't know if anybody remembers the hackathon. And that was really like we were doing some brainstorming. We're like thinking, this seems really good to us, but we're just MLS guys. We're not showing people, and so we really wanted to sort of test the metal a little bit and go. So we made this announcement. What we're going to do is we put this thing together in a vacuum to some degree. We did have some consultants help us with what these use cases were, and we had separated out the buyer side and the listing side. And we had that hackathon, and people came, and I was shocked at how we gave them about a week, I think. Was it about a week?
About 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
We had 2 weeks.
2 weeks to get from the point where they even see this API. I have no idea. We did give them some help. We talked to them as much as they wanted. But at the end of the day, they had 2 weeks notice, and they were going to be delivering something. It was incredible. They came up, and there was somebody who was just a single person. He built this stuff out to use the API. So we knew we had something. So the next phase was really this preview phase to say, okay, now let's build a product. Let's make sure that it really works. And TourZazz I don't think that I don't know if we showed what they had put together in terms of a video and everything. Hopefully you guys put that on your site somewhere. Really super compelling, a way that they were planning to use the hub even back at that point. So it was just really such a good experience. And I just feel like we moved it so fast because of all this involvement and this very concrete problem that we were working on and trying to get out as quick as we could. And very cooperative, So
we're getting close to our weekly calls starting to wrap up a little bit. We're moving into getting closer and closer to production. I'm going to miss the 3 to 4 calls a week that we had for various groups. It'll be nice to get some of that time back unless we decide to do something else together, which is definitely very possible since this has got some legs even beyond showings. But Mark, I think the question that I think people would be most interested in is what is the timing looking like? Well, what are we thinking, now that we've done all this work, we've talked about this collaboration, we've all put in all these resources, when can we expect to see this out in the wild?
So we're already entering our beta phase. The beta phase the beta's got 2 phases. The first phase is really kind of a listen-only phase, and Showing Time is the only participant. Showing Time, by the way, has just been great. They've been totally cooperative. They've been really good to work with, and they're starting up a beta phase with us so that we can have all the this uses a lot of webhooks. It's got quite a intricate technical infrastructure for it and approach, and we'll be testing all of that with them starting this month. So after we get that through a sort of where we understand where we're at, we have confidence in what we built, and it's all working, and if there's any kind of things we work out, we'll be moving into a phase where they'll be putting all the data into the hub, so then it's a write phase where they're writing things into the hub. Meanwhile, during that phase, we'll also be doing some mock endpoints for all of the vendors that have come in, integration partners. But everyone that's participated to that point will have, those guys will be able to exercise all the endpoints, exercise all of their internal code in this holistic model where there's all these participants. It's very difficult to test out what you built when you've only built a piece of it, and then you're interacting with lots of other pieces. So we've built a lot of tools to make it so it's easy to test. We'll be doing that during the same time. And then just kind of depending how that goes, are roughly talking about having something that will go out in production, early of first quarter of 2023. That's what we're targeting right now.
So in early 2023, this will be something that we're going to be releasing to everyone. So part of the reason why I wanted to give you all that timeline today is there's obviously going to be things you have to do with your MLS platforms to interact with that hub. Like really basic, you have to come up with showing settings, like which showing provider are we picking, and then making sure that that's populating through all the systems. So it'd be good for you to start having those conversations now, because then you'll be ready to immediately move into actually using the hub when that's ready to go. So.
Oh, I should point out, we are also starting those exact talks with Black Knight, with FBS, and with CoreLogic for their, and probably
and Dyna
MLS
Connections.
Connect, Dyna Connections.
Yep.
I don't want to exclude anybody because we really want to talk to all of them, because it'll be hopefully simpler for them as well as all the other partners.
On our last minute here, to wrap up, any final thoughts that you didn't get a chance to share that's just burning that you need to tell the group? Otherwise, we can maybe take like 1 or 2 questions if anyone's got that. Yes, Catherine.
So we have already talked about that a lot. We would like to use this same exact model for offers, because in what Michael was saying about buyer side and list side, same issue there, right? And we would like to have as many offer partners that have an application for that, have those guys plug in there as well, so that things can be seamless. They move across, and then again, a single point of integration for everybody. Take that one step after that, and we'll be working on transaction management, same kind of model. These are little ways out. We have a lot of things to kind of get together on that. But the beautiful part is that almost everything that we built is actually translatable to that space as well. So we won't be doing a lot of technical re-engineering. It's more about changing some of the context around the communication that's going back and forth in and out of that hub. So thanks for that question, Carol.
That's exciting.
All right, thank you very much to the panelists. Really appreciate it, and thank you, RESO, for having us. So.
Thank you, guys.